You're listening to Behind the Wheels with Doug Mason, Dave Walters, and Mike Yeagley. This is a show where we talk about heavy truck and medium-duty axle-ends. Doug, Dave, and Mike bring close to 100 years of experience and expertise in the transportation business. Join us once a month to learn new things about axle-ends. Sponsored by Alcoa Wheels, the global leader in aluminum wheel innovation.
Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Behind the Wheels. I'm Mike Yeagley.
I'm Doug Mason.
I'm Dave Walters.
And today we have Kevin Rohlwing from TIA. Kevin, great to have you on board.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Kevin, again, thank you for joining us. Now, Kevin is one of the world experts.
He's the world expert, according to Dave.
The world expert, according to Dave. That's high praise on tires. We have some questions about tires, and when we have problems, when we have questions, we go to the expert. And so we brought Kevin in to help us work through a couple of things, give us a little bit of his insights.
And I guess what we'd like to do, first of all, Kevin, is go ahead and give us a little bit of your background so people know why you're the expert in tires.
Well, I would say expert in tire service.
Okay,
is
very
probably
good.
where that's just to clarify that. I was born and raised in a tire dealership. Started at 15 years old, sweeping floors, stacking tires, scrubbing white walls. On my 16th birthday, my father gave me good news and bad news, and the good news was I was getting a raise, and the bad news I was going to start paying taxes. And then I started changing tires. Started with car tires, and then transitioned over to truck, small OTR, farm. If it's round and it's black and it fits in the back of a pickup truck, I've serviced it. I've demounted, mounted, inflated, changed, repaired, but never retreaded, right, Dave?
No.
I'm not a retreader. We've established that. I am not a retreader.
Not a retreader.
I've been around it for 24 years, but I'm not a retreader.
So 24 years you've been playing this game.
I've been in the association for 24 years. Yeah.
Okay, how many years have you been in the tire business?
38.
Dang.
Ever since I was 15, from
Now
15
you
to
can
29.
add that up now, 15 and 38 now.
15 years at the dealership, working for my dad.
Okay.
And then 24 years with the association. So, 14, 28, 38, somewhere around there. It's a long time.
That is long.
And
Most of my adult life.
And what are your responsibilities at TIA right now? Kind of what all do you handle?
My title is Senior Vice President of Training, so my primary responsibilities are all of our technical training programs. I'm also involved in events. I do government affairs, marketing, publications, pretty much everything that TIA does. My hands are in it one way or the other.
Sort of a cap and catch-all type thing.
Yeah, I'm the, I have to do a lot of different things. It's a small association, and nonprofits, senior executives typically have to wear a lot of hats.
Sure.
If you could, Kevin, briefly, a lot of people doesn't know what the TIA certification program is and all that. Could you briefly describe your program and how you train the technicians and train the trainers and kind of give us an overview of what you at TIA does?
Okay, yeah, we have training programs in automotive, commercial, earth mover, farm, and industrial tires. So we provide training for everybody. On the commercial space, we have two different types of programs. We have what we call a basic 200-level program, which is OSHA compliance, designed for new hires. So OSHA requires training for anybody that touches a truck tire. Doesn't matter what they do or how many they do. If they're touching truck tires, they have to have OSHA training. So our 200-level, what we call our basic program, is designed specifically for OSHA compliance. That's what it does. The next step is our certification program, which is our train the trainer, where somebody sends a key employee to a 4-day class. That person becomes a certified instructor, and then that instructor then goes back into the field and actually trains technicians. So, in a world and in an age where everything seems to be going electronic and it's all computer-based training and there's all this LMSs and modular-based learning, the tire industry since 1997 has always tried to preserve that one-to-one contact, that discussion between instructor and student, that personal, a touch there where it's not just read the book or do the thing and go out, but actually answering questions and getting dialogue. And it's really been kind of fun to watch, because when I first started back in 97, we were just trying to convince people they had to follow OSHA. And that took a couple years. Yeah. And what it's evolved to now is, especially in the truck tire space, you've got comprehensive employee training and safety programs now, and there's a group of safety and training professionals now in the tire industry that are getting together and gathering and sharing ideas. 23 years ago, 24 years ago when I started, that wasn't possible because they didn't exist. So I think what we've done at TIA is that we've brought attention to the safety aspect of changing truck tires and the importance of educating technicians on procedures and safety guidelines and OSHA regulations to protect them. I mean, I think that's, our logo at TIA is Tire Safety Starts Here. And that can encompass a lot of things, but I think the main thing is just it starts with a trained technician. And I'm real big about identifying hazards. I want guys to know, and we're very, very upfront about that in our training to more or less say, look, here are the ways you're going to die. Okay, these are the ways that you're going to die, and this is how it's going to happen. And when you know the hazards and you understand the hazards, now you're making decisions for your own personal safety. Because I can tell people, you got to do this or you got to do that. And are they going to believe me? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But when I put a mannequin in front of a cage and I have a zip rupture that blows up and sends shards of mannequin all over the place, it's very easy for me to tell a technician, don't stand there when you're inflating a tire. The zipper rupture tests that we did up in Knox years ago.
Yes.
Same thing. I mean, when they can visualize the risk, then they understand it better. And now they're going to make a decision for themselves. And when I'm in a class and I'm teaching technicians and I show that video, and the guys that have never seen it before, the first thing out of their mouths are, well, I'm not going to stand there when I'm inflating a tire. I just did my job.
Yeah, that's right.
And some of the videos that me and you and Pat did at Michelin years ago, great videos just to kind of help the industry. I've been very fortunate because I went to your school for the 4 days, and
Long time
all my staff has gone to your schools and became certified. And I think that's important for us to understand when we go out in the field a lot about what the tire is going on the wheel. And so it's nice that every one of my people are basically certified trainers from TIA, which I recommend that to anybody that's going to be out in the field a lot, because you can relate to the people. So.
Sure, and I think it's not just that, your guys are going to go out and actually train technicians because it's not their job. But certainly when they have that background knowledge, they can visit a dealer, they can visit someplace and recognize that, hey, that's unsafe, or what you're doing right there is not correct, and maybe not be the actual trainer, but to speak up and say something. I mean, and you kind of overstated a little bit, but I mean, you have the potential to save someone's life.
Oh, totally.
And I think that can't be lost, and I think that's part of what has made us successful over the years, is that we do keep the emphasis on safety, and I want people to go home at the end of the day. That's my thing. I don't care about the rest of that stuff. I mean, we sit in meetings and go over kind of stuff like that, and as soon as it affects safety, that's when you're going to get my attention, because I know how dangerous it is, and I investigate the accidents, and I've been part of the OSHA investigations, and I've been through all that stuff, and so I know how they're going to get hurt, and I know how they're going to die. So if I can relay that information and save them or their family that pain, then that's my job. I mean, that's how I look at it.
Let's say you have somebody, you don't have your video with you. What's the number one thing that you want them to
just walk through. That'd be
walk
good to
through
walk
a
through
couple
that.
of the critical things that you're trying to get across there.
Well, I can tell you right now, statistically, there's 3 ways you're going to die changing a truck tire. Okay, number 1 is the tire's going to blow up on you while you're inflating it. Now, if it's in a safety cage, if it's in a restraining device, and you've got an OSHA-compliant inflation device and you're standing outside the trajectory and the tire blows up inside the cage, we call that a code brown. And then, you basically, get a wardrobe change and go back to work.
Right.
All right. The other way is you're going to have the vehicle fall on you because you didn't use a jack stand. All right. Jacks are designed to lift and position. Jack stands are designed to support. If you work on a vehicle that's on a jack without a jack stand, you're basically putting your life in the hands of a $2 Chinese plastic ring at the bottom of the ram. All right. Now, if the vehicle is on a jack stand, then if the jack fails, the jack doesn't matter because it's on a jack stand. It's mechanically locked out. And then the other way is what we call a rollover. And we've been monitoring the OSHA fatalities for the last 10 years. And what we found is, statistically, those are the 3 ways. And the rollover is you're working on the truck and under the truck, and somebody hops in the driver's seat and drives away.
Oh,
so it happens all the time, especially with CSA. We've noticed that since CSA come on board, maintenance is a lot more up in front of the reach of
Okay.
the fleets. They're much more concerned about brakes and stuff like that. So there's more people under the trucks. So when CSA kind of took over, we noticed that really kind of ticked up a lot, and so what we did was we put a lot of emphasis on lockout tagout. Is what we're saying is that you've got to have lockout tagout. Not so much that you're mechanically isolating the machine, but it's communication. It's a steering wheel cover. It's something across the door. It's something that communicates to the person that's jumping in the driver's seat of that vehicle that it's being worked on and it shouldn't be moved. And I've investigated several accidents where technicians were under the vehicle and the driver gets in the vehicle and drives off and then ba-dump. What was that? Well, that was just a technician you ran over and now he's dead.
Now,
And there's no lockout tagout, so he didn't know. The driver feels terrible about it, but how is he supposed to know? So we've put a lot of emphasis in the last few years on lockout tagout, and the rollover accidents have plummeted.
I was going to say, how did you get the word out on that? I mean, lockout tagout, people who work in a plant or anything like that are very familiar with lockout tagout, but you wouldn't even really think about that with a vehicle.
Well, the great thing is at TMC, we've made RPs on every one of these subjects now. And, when Kevin or one of us sees something out in the field, we bring it to TMC and we make an RP. So, I mean, we always kid Kevin about being the expert on lifting and jacking, and
Absolutely.
and said,
Jacking and lifting. You always jack
jacking
first,
and
then
lifting,
you lift.
jacking and lifting.
Jack first, then lift.
Jack
Yes.
first and then lift. But every time we write an RP, that's going out in the industry from TMC, and we're doing the lockout, tag out. The great thing about it is we diagnose a problem, bring it into an organization like TMC, get it out. TIA is another great organization that's, with the technicians. So, I mean, that's our job as
Right.
being in the industry, is to get it out.
I'd like to just take one moment here because, Kevin, you realize this, but this podcast is going to be going global. So people down in
Sure.
South America are taking what we're saying here. I'm being told that they're going to be doing some transcribing and then putting it into local languages. And so when we talk about CSA, they might not be familiar with what we're talking about there.
Well, CSA is Compliance, Safety, and Accountability, which is a new initiative from the government back in 2010 to better grade or assess the safety and I don't know what you call it, but just the level of operation of a fleet. Because it's more than just maintenance. It's medical cards, it's accidents, it encompasses the basics. I can't remember what they exactly are, but there's more attention being given right now to vehicle maintenance.
Yeah,
and that means you have more people under the vehicles, which is kind of where that came from.
Your CSA score is so important to fleets right now because it's not only about your safety, it's about the driver's safety and his record, and it's about log violations, and it's about the whole picture.
Right.
Are you running a safe operation?
That goes straight to your insurance.
And it goes
All right.
to your insurance.
Well, they had to change it, though, because it was being like anything else. A lot of great ideas are great ideas, and then, in practice it starts getting taken away because people were starting to check scores.
Yes.
And they've had to change how they do that because they were doing it originally where they would rank you in your group.
Ooh.
And see, you'd have groups from 0 to 100. Now, the difference between 90 and 20 might be very, very minimal, in actuality. But when you look at a number, and they're a 10% in maintenance, and this is a 90% in maintenance, or a 90, the lower the number, the better. So they've had to change that a little bit so it's not misused, but it's still a good grading. And what I think is the most important thing about it that I noticed when we were doing our CSA video with Michelin was it's the enforcement officials. That's really where the change has gone.
Okay.
Because when you're graded on everything, when you're graded on medical cards and you're graded on safety and you're graded on and all those different things, the enforcement officials on the side of the road, they only have like 5 to 10 minutes to inspect a vehicle. They know exactly where to go. They've got your CSA scores when you're coming across the scale. If your maintenance scores are good, they're not going to go to maintenance. But if your medical card scores are terrible, they're going to ask for those. If your log scores are terrible, they're going to ask for those. And I think that's the thing that CSA has done is it's become a tool for enforcement officials to know where to look.
And a lot of the CSA or CVSA inspectors, they know that there are fleets that have perfect maintenance, and they wave them through because it's a waste of time.
Correct.
For them to go through it all. So, I mean,
So it's really helped out the fleets a lot from that standpoint.
If you're good.
If you're good.
No,
If
well,
you're
that's
good.
good. It's good. It's
If you're not good, it's kind of hard to hide.
Yeah.
But that also,
It's a
you know,
driving
being
force.
good at that puts a lot of incentive to have that guy
Sure.
underneath the truck, and the lockout tagout becomes hugely important because it's a much more likelihood that there's going to be something that happens in that bay.
Right. And back to what Dave said before, you know, TIA, we update our programs every 5 years. So we're updating our programs constantly as well. And because we are active in TMC, the TIA material lines up perfectly with TMC, which lines up perfectly with USTMA, which lines up with TRMG.
So important.
Which lines up with the Alcoa service manual, because every 5 years, everybody would say, why do you want to change the manual every 5 years? Well,
We need
TMC changes and TIA, we all go together.
We're all singing from the same sheet of music.
We're all singing from the same book.
And I know Dave does this as well as I do. And, you know, we've spent some time in court and defending procedures and guidelines and processes. And when everybody's the same, when you can go into a courtroom and be like, well, these guys, everybody says the same thing, it makes the job of the plaintiff's attorney much more difficult to place blame on something that probably had nothing to do with it, but it was just something that was inconsequential in many cases.
Well,
but
it makes it truly an industry standard, right? It's not an Alcoa standard or a TIA standard.
I don't use the word standard.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly. But no, you're right. I mean, it is. There's consistency, and I think that's the biggest strength that we've had at TIA over the years is that we have taken those steps to ensure that we're consistent with everybody. You know, that's part of the reason why we're here. I mean, I know I started in TMC back in '96, and it's been incredible for me professionally and personally because I've learned so much, and all the people that taught me now have kind of moved on. And, you know, now this is the scary part. Dave and I now are the teachers. These are the teachers right here. We're the guys that are teaching everybody. But
what is really scary is when I come here and somebody asked me yesterday, one of the T-Lot kids, and said, well, when did you start coming to TMC? And I said, I regularly 1992.
And they weren't born yet.
And that's exactly what the kid said.
yeah.
I wasn't even born yet.
I get that
and I'm
too.
like, oh boy, I feel old. But, you know, over the years of coming to TMC, it's been great. Kevin, you're a part of the stuff. But one of the greatest things that I've ever seen happen at TMC was the day that every wheel company had a different wheel torque, every truck had a different wheel torque. And I remember sitting in a meeting saying, by the end of the day, you wheel guys are going to come to a torque that we can go across the industry. And that is what's so great about TMC, because you have this vast knowledge of people sitting in a room, and we all had to give and take a little bit, but by the end of the day, we came up to 450 to 500 foot-pounds, regardless of what wheel, what truck.
for disc wheels,
For disc wheels, you know, 22-millimeter studs. And that's gigantic for the industry to have standard. And we even went ball seat on that. So, I mean, those are great things that when we sit in these meetings and we talk about something and we banter back and forth, but by the end of the day, we come out with something great for the industry, like a common wheel torque.
Well, let's put in a little plug for anybody who's out there going to be listening to this, that TMC is an organization to really get involved in to improve your fleet efficiency overall, safety overall.
Absolutely.
It's all there.
It's the best thing in North America for the maintenance organizations.
No question.
And it really is. I've spent a lot of time overseas. I can't tell you how many times I have been frustrated by the ability to spread the word in Japan and China and South America and Europe. Every shop is different, and there's no TMC. There's no way to get the word out easily. It takes a Herculean effort to get anything done.
I'll give you a perfect example of that in the heat damage to disc wheels issue that we had years ago. You know, I've got 4,000 instructors that I can reach in the snap of a finger. And when it came to stuff like that, when we understood what, you know, heat damage to disc wheels was about, we had that stuff out in the field within a month. I mean, it's like, this is a problem and this is the check, and we had that stuff out right away. We have a bi-monthly magazine that we put out there. So we can reach the tire guys real fast, and TMC can reach the fleets really fast. So, I mean, you can literally, within 30 days, you can reach a huge swath of North America on any kind of technical or safety concerns and hit right at it and get it to the guy in the field. I mean, that's, you know, stuff sits on the boss's desks all over the nation, but our instructors are very dedicated to their guys.
I mean, a lot of these guys that you're talking about have been through your training.
Oh, yeah.
And where they might not be the manager. These are just grunt guys who are actually going out and doing the work, and they're getting something in their inbox that says, hey, this is what's going on.
Well, and they're creating career paths. That was my big thing.
Yeah.
My big thing years ago was, look, we've got all these technicians who have all this experience, and then their bodies break down. And then what do we do with them?
To move on.
What do we do with them? And we're losing all that. We're losing all that institutional and all that, that industry experience. Let's take that guy with 15, 20 years of experience and turn him into an instructor. And now he can pass that knowledge on to the next guys. And when I see that, when I'm in a meeting and I see a guy that was a technician and he became an instructor and he did so well that they made him a safety manager and now he's the director of safety. I mean,
that's exciting.
For me, it is. It's fun to watch that because we're making it safer. I mean, the insurance companies are now looking at us as an industry and saying, you guys aren't that bad anymore.
That's great.
20 years ago, you guys were a disaster.
Yeah.
And now it's, you're not a bad risk. I mean, you do a pretty good job. You're managing risk. And I think that's the main thing is that we're getting tire dealers to manage risk because you can't eliminate it. All you can do is manage it.
We talked before we went online here, before we went live, we talked a little bit about some of the things that we really need those guys to know.
Yeah.
Right? We talked a little bit already about the safety stuff. Okay, moving past the safety stuff, what's next?
Like putting a tire on a wheel.
Yeah, go through it.
Let's talk
Step
about
by
the
step.
number one issue, which me and you have had this conversation.
We've had quite a few.
times.
We've had quite a few. I mean,
Quite a few.
I think if you're going to divide it up, I mean, of course, you got to get the car, you got to get the vehicle, you got to get tires off the machine, off the vehicle. So it starts with the lifting and support. Use a jack stand and a jack and stabilize it and mechanically lock it out so it can't fall on me. Then you're going to remove the assembly, which is pretty simple. That's not really a big deal.
What if it's? I've had people talk to me and say, "Well, it's rusted on. I can't get it off. I mean, I loosen the lug nuts and drive it around, right?"
I mean, no. I wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest that you, in those instances, actually, there's, of course, the easiest solution is just to get a rubber mallet or a dead blow hammer and get behind it and just, take some swings, take out a little frustration on people. But there are new devices now, and I mean, have you seen the shark fin?
Yes.
Ken Tool came out with a device called a shark fin, which is designed off of the airbags used in fire and rescue. And they've got it's only probably about like a half inch or maybe an inch wide, and then you inflate it and it creates separation.
Perfect.
So it's not damaging the wheels because they had wheel pullers from years ago that would pull off the handholds. I show those to Dave, and Dave's like, I don't want people putting metal hooks in my handholds.
Well, yes, so that damage,
and pulling my wheels off.
Yeah.
Because you're damaging the material. But if you take a rubber pad, a rubber inflatable pad and put it between the wheels and use that to get separation, you're not damaging the wheels. You're not going to do anything like that, and you make it safer. So I think that's if the wheels won't come off with the hammer and all that stuff, then what you got to do is you get a shark fin or you get something else. And I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but we're real big on following manufacturers' procedures. I mean, we reference Alcoa in our training, and we encourage all of our guys to have the manuals from all the different rim companies. We put the TMC User's Guide in our manual because, again, we just feel they need to have that information. So once you've got the tire off the machine or off the vehicle, now you're going to get into the demounting and mounting.
Right.
For years, you had the tire hammer, the duckbill hammer, and guys are taking the duckbill hammer and swinging the duckbill hammer. Well, I mean, Alcoa doesn't want people smacking the rim flanges and the bead seat areas with a metal hammer. So, we had to kind of adjust that and get him into the slide hammers and using that correctly to unseat the beads. Now you're going to go to demount the tire, okay? There's different tools to demount and mount the tire, but the first thing is to lube. Put some form of a rubber lubricant on the beads so that you're not tearing the beads up as you're removing the tire from the rim. Because in most cases, you're going to save that casing for retreading.
Right.
And if you tear up the beads too much, then you can't retread the casing. Now you've lost the asset. Now the fleet loses that asset, and that's huge for them. I mean, that's costing them money. So we're trying to be professional, so we're real big on that. Now, once you've got the tire dismounted and the tire's off the rim, we're real big on inspection. I mean, we really spend a lot of time on inspection of components, inspection of the rim, inspection of the surfaces. I mean, it's really important for us. So we put a lot of emphasis on that, and then it comes to mounting. And this is where, Dave and I have had
now,
a number of
step back for a second.
Yeah.
We're strictly talking about the tire here. What are they looking for in the tire? When you're doing this inspection, what are the main things that they should be concerned about, and what would you kind of step through for an inspection?
We always divide it up. I mean, you're going to do tread, sidewall, beads, and interior. Okay, so tread, we're looking to make sure we have sufficient tread. You don't want any cuts or chips that expose any plies. You don't want to have any steel, or now we're not saying fabric anymore, it's textiles.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes, now we're for years it's been fabric. We're leaving it as fabric because my guys won't understand textiles, so I'm leaving it as fabric. That will be a
Textile's
difference.
a plant, right?
I mean, yeah, textile could be anything. I mean, it's fabric. It's there's some real geniuses in there sometimes that love to get into some
confused.
things.
They want to get rid of fabric?
Yeah, we don't refer to it now as fabric. We refer to it as textile.
Okay.
It's textile, which my guys.
This is an offline discussion.
No.
I'm wondering why.
Because there are people in that room that felt textile was more accurate. So I really don't care. I'm leaving it as fabric.
Okay.
I run TIA, so I get to do what I want. So we're leaving it as fabric. But you want to look for those things. You're looking for damage. You're looking for insufficient tread depth. You're looking for anything that could, jeopardize the safety or the integrity of the casing from the tread side. Same thing with the sidewall. You're looking for bulges. You're looking for anything that exposes material, fabric or steel. Same in the bead. Some bead damage is repairable. Some bead damage is not. So you have to know which is which. Is this repairable damage or it isn't? And then the same thing on the inside.
That type of literature, that'd be something TIA puts out? Or
Oh
would
yeah,
that be
it's in
by
all of our training programs.
TMC, like
Has
I
it as
said,
well?
everything is TMC, TIA. Everybody kind of goes to the same
Just
drum.
so people realize they can
if we
find
put
it.
into the show notes a TIA website, people can be able to go.
Yeah,
go through.
tireindustry.org. Just go to www.tireindustry.org. The great thing is like I said, now we have our own online learning platform. So we can provide training anywhere in the world, for that matter.
Perfect.
If you buy it that way, and you've got complete training across the board. You just sign up for the online diverse. Now it's all in English, but English is a pretty common language now from a business perspective. So, and other people have said, look, even if I can't read the language, I can't understand the language, I can still see the pictures.
There's plenty of graphics.
Oh yeah, videos. We do a lot of video. We're visual learners. Tire guys are fingertips in.
Right.
Tire guys, everything is fingertips in. You ask them to think outside their fingertips, they can't do it.
Right.
If they can't touch it, feel it, hold it, move it, and manipulate it physically, they don't understand it.
Right.
So you really got to kind of stick with that visual learning, and that's what we do. We put a lot of that in there, a lot of the visual learning. So that's available for them as well. So I mean, that's the easy part.
Okay.
I mean, getting the tire off the machine, getting the tire off the vehicle, and getting it off the rim, that's the easy part. The hard part comes next, and that's the mounting and the installation. On the mounting side of it, when we inspect the rim, we're inspecting rim flanges, we're inspecting bolt holes, we're inspecting bead seat areas, we're inspecting drop centers, we're inspecting everything on that rim. I'm going to get the best inspection when it's off the tire. When I've got just a bare rim,
Clean it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clean
Get
it
the
up.
bead seating surfaces. I mean, and for the mounting process.
So important.
Yeah, exactly. On an aluminum wheel, it's a symmetrical drop. So which side are you going to demount and mount from? The side that people don't see. So, we try and give that to them as well, just so that they're understanding what their role is in the system. So, and then we get back to lube, and this is where, Dave and I have had a number of conversations is, what do you lube? And, Dave always calls it as lube. You lube the tire and the rim. We're real good about lubricating the rim, about the tires, but we don't do a good job of lubricating the rim all the time. When you just put lube on the beads, most of that lube gets rubbed off on the flanges as the tire slides over the flange. So now it's a dry mount. And when you dry mount a tire, concentric bead seating is going to be much more difficult. You're going to get irregular wear patterns. You're going to get vibrations. I mean, there's a million and one things that can go wrong when you don't lubricate the rim as well as the bead. So we put a lot of emphasis on that, using lubricants with anti-corrosive properties. It's all part of the process of getting that tire centered on that rim.
A
Really
couple
a problem
things
on
I'll
steer.
bring up real quick is, again, at TMC, the conversations we had on lube, because the wheel could take a petroleum-based product or vegetable-based, where the tires are made of petroleum, so they don't want a petroleum-based lube. Water is bad for both of us. But again, as we go through this, and we all stay the same, so we know that this is a type of lube that we need. Lube is critical in our industry, because Kevin brought up about concentric seating. And I always say that's one of the dark secrets of our industry.
Got that right.
There's a lot of concentric seating issues because they did not lube.
Or they seated the beads with the tire standing up.
Yes.
I mean, gravity. It's
Yeah,
real simple.
yeah.
If the tire is standing up, the wheel's going to fall down. So as the beads seat, you've got gravity working against you. So especially on steer tires, you should seat the tires with, the laying flat. And there's stands out there now. People put them on buckets. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. But the objective is to seat the beads on the rim so that it's centered on the rim. It's concentrically seated on both sides. And it'll tear steer tires up. I mean, you want to talk about irregular wear patterns on a steer tire, get a non-concentrically seated bead, and it'll tear up in 50,000 miles. You'll have all kinds of crazy wear because the tread's basically working like a snake. Every time that sidewall's in a little bit over here, it's 650 revolutions per mile, right? Mm-hmm. All right? So after 1,000 miles, that's 650,000 times that tire's scrubbed sideways. Scrub anything sideways 650,000 times. What's going to happen?
And on the tire, there's they call it the GG ring, right? Is
The
that one way to
molded
tell
rib,
that's-
yeah. The molded rib on the lower sidewall. GG ring is a Goodyear specific term. But
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, though. I mean, everybody calls it the same thing. All the old Goodyear guys will always.
That's what they call
GG
all
rings.
wheels Alcoas, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Well, just the aluminums. Just aluminums, not the steel wheels. Not
One
steel
of the
wheels.
things when we're talking about that, you have to have 230 seconds. But most of the time.
For driving trailer.
Yeah. Most of the time, I can go and look at the beads, and
Yes.
they kind of like come in and out. And if you see that, you got concentric seating issues.
Right. Yeah.
And the question always from the person is, which one's bad, the tire or the wheel? And say neither. It was the way you mounted them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Right.
well,
Yeah, the rim's running true, but the tire's doing this.
Yeah.
The tire's going side to side, and the rim's running straight down the road.
Right.
Now, it's
You got to get them aligned.
Exactly. Wheels can bend too, but I mean, it's unlikely that you're going to get that much lateral bend in a wheel, especially on an aluminum wheel. But because it'll probably crack before it'll bend.
Now, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not to lube the drop well. Experts can disagree, we'll say, on this one, but I'd like to get your input on that.
We recommend that you lubricate the entire surface of the rim just because it's the best practice. And if you're using a proper lubricant and it isn't water-based and it has some anti-corrosive properties, it's not going to hurt anything. It's going to give you a better seat. Okay? The issue comes into if you're using any kind of a dry balance compound and there's lubricant on the drop center well of the rim, you're going to get issues there. It's going to stick to it. It's going to make it less effective. It's going to ball up. You've got to minimize the amount of moisture inside the cavity when you've got a dry compound, obviously. So the dry balance compound guys would prefer that you do not lubricate the rim because of that. Now
again, I can bring up, the pressure sensors and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
They don't like that
Oh, yeah.
either. So, I mean, as we debate this, my number one concept is lube. Lube the beads of the wheel, bead of the tire. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it's really what I'm saying is if you have sensors, you got compounds, that's really going to dictate do you want to do the center of the wheel.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we're going to stay with what we're doing. I mean, because then, and Dave and I have had this conversation as well. If a properly mounted tire is on a high-quality rim, it probably shouldn't have a lot of imbalance to begin with.
Right.
Right.
I mean, let's face it. The Alcoa wheels or any,
We're talking thousands.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the amount of run out is so small, and the imbalance is so small. And on a high quality truck tire, it's the same thing. It doesn't need a lot of balance. There are instances where balance has shown to help, and I mean, we've both been part of all that. And I'm not going to say you don't need to balance. I'm just saying that it's not as important as some might seem to think. If you've done everything properly, then balance is going to be a minor factor.
Okay.
In the process.
Yeah,
but if you're
fixing an issue if you
yeah,
have to do
exactly.
a lot of balance.
If it's not concentrically seated,
Yeah.
then I can spend all the money I want on balance technology, and I'm still going to get irregular wear.
Right.
Because I'm not going to get, it's not going to roll in a straight line. It's going to have a little bit of a kick. So I mean, scrub is scrub. Like I said, if it scrubs a quarter of an inch 650,000 times every 5,000 miles, that's a lot. I mean, move anything 650,000 times, it's going to have an impact.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about seating that bead. Lots of different ways.
It's all lubed up nice. It's all ready to go.
It's all ready to go. Now it's time to seat the bead. What do you got to say there?
Well, I mean, everybody uses some kind of a compressed air blasting device. It's a tank that has compressed air in it, and you shoot the air in it, and it expends the beads out, and that'll get the beads to seat on the rim. so that it's sealed. So now it's airtight. Now, one of the things that we do at TIA is that we are adamant about always inflating tires with the valve cores removed. You never inflate a tire with the valve core in the valve stem.
Okay, and
Never.
why?
Never. If the valve core is in the valve stem and during the inflation process, something goes wrong, you notice a bulge, you're noticing a separation, there's a crack in the rim or something like that. Air chucks don't always stay on valve stems enough to depress the pin on the valve core to allow the air to go in and out. So if the air chuck were to somehow dislodge itself from the valve stem so that it's not depressing the valve core anymore, how am I going to deflate the tire?
I see. Yeah.
I'm going to have to go into the trajectory zone
Yeah, to do that.
to do that. Now, if there's no valve core in the valve stem and I see a problem, cut the hose, disconnect the hose, I really don't care. I can pull on the hose and rip it off the valve stem and it's going to deflate itself.
Yeah.
But when the valve core is in the valve stem during inflation, you have no recourse. There's no way to get the air out of that tire if the air chuck does not depress the valve core to the point where air is allowed in and out of the valve stem.
And so you just brought up another point, though. While you're doing the inflation, you just basically mentioned another inspection,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, sure. Well, you're inspecting for a zipper rupture. And a zipper rupture occurs in a steel radial truck tire where it's overflexed in the sidewall and it's a circumferential separation. They don't want to use separation. I'm leaving it as separation. This is together. It comes apart. It's separated. So when you get a circumferential separation in the sidewall of a tire, it's called a zipper rupture. It's caused by overinflation and overloading, and it's a blast of air. And here's the thing. It's not the blast of air that kills you. That's not what kills you. You know what kills you? Blunt force trauma. When it knocks you off your feet and you land on your back and you smack your head on the concrete, or the machine next to you, or the trailer next to you, or the post, or the wall.
Another reason to stay out of the line of trajectory.
Exactly. I always say this: if you can see the sidewall of the tire when you're inflating it, you're in the wrong place. And I don't care what it is.
Even in a cage.
I don't care what it is. Bicycles, motorcycles, car tires, little bitty forklift tires, wagon tires. I don't care. When you're inflating a tire, you stand even with the tread. If you're even with the tread, then you're in the safest place you could possibly be. Tires will never separate at the tread when they're being inflated.
And
Always sidewall.
When we were doing a zipper test for TMC in Knox years ago, I was amazed that the tire engineers would walk right up to the tread side, and they were not scared whatsoever. But my goodness, they would never be in front. And it was like, these guys designed these, and they're scared to death.
Except for the one time, though. Remember the one time we were videotaping it? We set the camera up in front of so we could see it from the side.
Right.
And as I was like kind of aiming the camera, one let go on me. And I was a good 10, 15 feet away. And I think I did almost a complete backflip coming off the chair to get the hell out of the way. That was the fastest I think I've ever moved. But yeah, Dave's exactly right. When we were doing those tests, we had no qualms whatsoever about walking up to a tire with big bulges all over it, as long as we were even with the tread. But no one would stand in front of it. No one would get into the trajectory of that sidewall.
Right.
Because that's where you're going to get hurt. That's where the accidents occur.
Now, one thing that when we talk about mounting the tire, and I know, me and you go way back.
Oh, yeah.
And, before bead blasters or,
Yep.
Well, I've heard these stories. This is going to be good. This is going to be good.
So if
This is personal experience, isn't it?
This is a
Not me,
lot.
though.
I've done it many a time.
And I've never done it.
I've done it many a times, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The old can of ether, and you spray it around, throw the match to it, and seat your beads.
Yep.
The most dangerous practice I've ever seen. And a couple years ago on the ice road truckers, I seen one of the drivers doing that, saying, "This is the way you do it." Well, I'm here to tell you.
Did you give him a call?
This is scary.
Yeah,
but
we've done that. We've sent letters to television shows, and they just don't respond. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. But no, Dave's exactly right. I mean, when you put a flammable substance inside of a tire and ignite it to seat the beads, there's remnants there. There's going to be explosive gases inside that tire, and there have been some accidents where, a guy takes a duckbill hammer on a steel wheel and goes to swing it, and it sparks it, and it blows up on him.
The one that I seen most was a guy who's taking the valve core out of the tire. Guy's grinding over on the next thing.
Yep.
Spark hits that air coming out, and boom,
Boom.
an explosion. They're like So what happened? Well, you ethered it to start with, and now it blew up.
Yeah.
Well, and it can also it can contribute to a chamber fire. If enough of it's put in there and it kind of soaks itself into the rubber on the inside of the tire, when you put it in a chamber during the retread process, that's high pressure and high temperature for hours at a time.
Good point.
It'll start it on fire. And if you have any kind of flammable residue on the inside of a tire and it goes in a chamber, it starts a fire inside the chamber. And that's, now you've got a bomb. You've got a bomb. That's, you know, that's, and not to mention the fact that you're going to destroy a $250,000 chamber. So, I mean, there's a lot of bad things that happen when people, you know, use flammable material to seat the beads on tires. Fortunately, in the professional space, no one does it anymore.
No. When I go out to do training classes, I can tell the veterans against the younger ones. The younger ones don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
But every time you mention that, the veterans kind of snicker and grin, and you're thinking
They did it.
They did it. But,
We did it. Yeah, we did it back when I was working for my dad. Before I got there, and one went bad, and you could still see the ring in the concrete and the hole in the ceiling from when it blew up and went straight up. And fortunately, nobody was standing in front of it when it blew. From that point forward, my dad was just like, no more. We're throwing away all the ether, and he went out and bought the big seat rings and all the different blasting devices and said, this is how we're going to do it. If I find ether, you're fired. That was
That
just
would have
the
been
end
a
of it.
scary situation.
Yeah, he said that when he heard the explosion, he came running out of his office, and we had a new skylight, and that was the end of that. But we left the ring in the concrete in the shop.
As a show, as something to talk about.
Yeah, well, when that's, you know, I never like to hire experienced guys because they bring bad habits into my shop. Okay, I would prefer a guy that's green that knows nothing, and then I can teach him the right way from the start. And we would get guys that would come in and say, "Where's the ether?" And everybody would just point to the ring on the floor, and say, "It's right there."
Right.
You know, and well, what's that? That's what happened the last time we used ether in this shop. And if you're caught using ether, you'll be unemployed.
Right.
So that
Possibly
pretty much took
dead.
care of that. Well, but you know, it's more about.
That's
you know,
still, I mean, ether still is out
Oh
there.
no,
though.
it is. I mean, and see, we had road service trucks, and that's the thing is that, you know, I have control in the shop.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. On the road service truck, I got nothing, man. I got nothing. I don't know what those guys are doing out there. I got no clue. All I know is that, you know, the truck doesn't get wrecked, they don't lose their tools, and the stuff that they fixed stays fixed. That's success in the tire business on road service. Because we have no idea.
Yeah.
These guys are like independent. It's just them and their truck on the road.
Yeah.
You don't know what they're doing out there.
Right.
So that's the concern that we had was that, you know, we would just spot check trucks and just make sure that, you know, we had one guy that talked about it, and I just warned him. I said, look, if the old man finds ether in your truck, first of all, it's a diesel. So you can't give the old I need it to start the truck nonsense because you're not going to be able to do that. That was, I need it to start my truck. It's a diesel, genius. Yeah, that's not going to do anything for you. But no, we're a lot safer today. I mean, the industry's a lot safer. TIA's played a role in that. Our thousands of instructors have played a role in that. The dealers have embraced safety, and they've finally seen the high costs of low training. So it's really been an evolution in many ways, and you know, I'm proud to be part of it, and Dave's part of it, and Alcoa's part of it, and TMC's part of it, and you know, everybody that participates in the RPs is part of it. I mean, so it's really a community thing, and I think, you know, we have a lot to be proud of as an industry that we've made it more professional, we've made it safer, and we've turned it into something that is sustainable, you know, long term, because it's hard work. I mean, you know, tire service is not easy.
No,
you know, but you can make a good living at it. You just got to work.
So you've got the tire inflated now. We got that far. We got to the tire being inflated. Once they've got that inflated and they do a little inspection while it's still in the cage, it sounds like?
Yeah, we'll do inspections while it's still in the cage. And we overinflate it to do kind of like a pressure test. And then put the valve core in it, and, you know, now comes the...
You said overinflate it.
Yeah, we'd overinflate radial truck tires, yeah.
Okay, so what would you inflate them to?
20 pounds over the sidewall.
Okay.
It's a pressure test. I mean, again, in that zipper rupture
this
space.
is standard, right? For anybody who's working out there is doing this, inflate any tire you're inflating, overinflate.
That was
Radials.
part of the tests that we ran
Radial
in
truck
Knox
tires.
years
Radial
ago.
truck tires,
Yeah.
okay.
Because it used to be we had to go 20 minutes with 20 pounds. So what we proved by doing all our testing is they blew up before.
Like that.
You know, the 20-minute rule was not applicable. The 20-minute rule was not applicable.
So
So
20
we were able,
PSI, not
20
minutes.
PSI over whatever's on the sidewall, not to exceed 120 or 140 depending on the tire. But
Right.
it's a pressure test.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, makes sense.
if it doesn't blow up at 120, it's not going to in the cage. It's not going to blow up at 100 when it's in my face.
Right.
Because it's really kind of hard to install it on the machine or the vehicle without being in the trajectory of the
Well,
sidewall.
you have to be.
You're right in front of it.
Yeah.
So overinflate it, and if it doesn't blow up there, then it shouldn't blow up in your face. So we always prescribe that procedure, and again, most of our people now, everybody's gone to automatic inflators that do it automatically.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you just basically hook the air chup on there and hit the button, and it takes it to 20 psi and it stops, and then you got to do the inspection, and then you have to hit the button to make it go to 120, and then it goes to 120, and then you inspect it, and then you hit the button again, and then it brings it back down to 100, and then it's on the way.
Okay.
So you don't have to stand there and watch every pound going
Right,
in.
right,
And it's a high pressure type thing. It inflates faster. There's
And
a lot of
most
those
of the
out there.
shops have multitudes
Oh, yeah.
of these.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Yeah, big
they're
shops. yeah.
they're doing multitudes of these at a
Yeah.
time. The automatic inflators have really
Yes.
made their life great. So
It's made it more efficient. Yeah, no question. It's more efficient. It's more efficient. So
now we go put it
so
on the
here
vehicle.
we go. Here we go. This is this started. Oh boy, 13, 14 years ago. Maybe even more, 15 years ago. We were doing work with a large retailer on the car side. We're real big on using proper torque. So it's a procedure that kind of leads up to it. And this particular retailer that we were working with said, you know what? I need an acronym. I need something that I can teach my guys that's going to remind them of what to do when you install a wheel. And that's when I came up with WRIST, the WRIST procedure. And the WRIST procedure is now the industry standard for wheel installation across the board. And WRIST is remove, inspect, snug, torque. Okay? Remove debris from mating surfaces. All right, Dave, if I've got debris on the mating surfaces, what's going to happen?
Bad things.
Yeah, loose joint.
All right, but I got the right torque, though.
Yeah,
I got the right torque, Dave. No, Dave, I went out and I bought $20,000 torque devices, and I'm guaranteed to be within half of a foot-pound of 475 foot-pounds. But if I don't clean the mating surfaces, what happens?
It's going to
Lose
loosen
it.
up and then lose.
The joint settles, the material works itself out, I've lost my bolt tension, I lose my clamping force, but I had the right torque.
And again, they tell you that
But
every
I
day.
had the right torque, Dave.
I know.
Yeah, this sounds like a discussion that you guys have had once or twice.
Many times, many times.
There's many
So,
reasons to
yeah,
have the right torque, but not the right
correct.
tension.
Well, but, I mean, again, it's...
and then the best one is, hey, we have those little indicators,
oh, jeez.
you know, and
Stupid
me
arrows.
and Kevin both understands that doesn't tell you that.
Right, they look pretty.
You can
They look
settle a
pretty.
joint without it moving.
Yes. Yep.
Yes, you can, and by the time that wheel comes loose, you're never going to find those little indicators.
No.
So you got wrist. So it's
Remove. R.
Remove.
Remove debris from mating surfaces.
Perfect.
We got to have clean mating surfaces.
Perfect.
I is inspect. You got to inspect the components. All right. If it's a ball seat wheel and the ball seats are worn, but I got the right torque, wrong tension. If it's a hub piloted system and the flanges don't move, I've got the right torque, but I'm going to get the wrong tension. If the bolt holes are worn, if the studs are necked out,
Yep.
I mean, again, you know, the fallacy and the disservice that this industry had been doing for so many years was torque, 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 torque.
And that's a good thing. I mean, we really hammered on torque.
Right.
Yeah, but you're making a great point. You know, it's not just torque.
No. We say this. Torque is the setting on the oven.
Yep.
Torque's the setting on the oven. The recipe for clamping force and bolt tension is remove, inspect, snug.
That's right.
All right, and we use that when we're teaching our classes. You know, if you've got the right temperature on the oven, does it guarantee that your recipe is going to come out correctly? No. It guarantees nothing. I mean, if I'm supposed to grease the pan and I don't grease the pan, then whatever I put in the pan ain't coming out of the pan.
It's one step in the process.
Correct. So we try and use that recipe. WRIST is the recipe for bolt tension and clamping force. So remove debris from mating surfaces, and then you're going to inspect all the components. You know, inspect the studs, the nuts, the bolts, the wheels, the bolt holes, everything. It all has to be in good condition. And then S is snug in a star pattern. You got to seat the wheels. You know, on hub piloted wheels, position the pilot
Yeah,
pad at 12
make sure.
o'clock.
Yes.
Make sure the wheels are properly seated. I know Dave and I have gone through this a lot with, you know, look, if the wheels aren't properly seated, then as soon as the thing's underweight,
Yeah, you're
it's going
gone.
to click back into place, and then exactly. Now we got loose wheels, but we had the right torque.
Had the right torque.
You keep going back to that. We have the right torque. Well, but if the wheel's not seated properly, if I don't have equal distribution of force between all 10 of the bolts and the lug nuts, Same thing. You know, you can have the greatest torque devices in the world, but if it's not seated properly, the wheels are still coming loose.
I think a lot of folks don't realize how little movement of that nut,
Rotation
of the nut it takes to get to from hand tightened to 500 foot-pounds.
Especially on a hub piloted system.
Especially on a hub pilot system. I mean, a half a turn, three-quarters of a turn, something like that is going to take you
hundreds
from hand tightened to where you need to be. They pull out the big guns, they drive it down, they take it 3 or 4 turns, and it's way over torque. You don't need a whole lot past that hand tightened.
In the tire business, we call them ugga-duggas. You know, how many ugga-duggas does it take to get to the right torque? And you can't guess that. But I will. And you know, to give credit where credit's due, you know, Alcoa came out with those centering pins that I always give them a hard time about how much they cost. So if the Alcoa marketing people are listening right now, you're charging too much for your damn pins. But, you know, and now there's all kinds of private market. But, I mean, those things are fantastic. And we promote those in our classes, and we put them in our videos because you're going to get the drum seated. If you use those pins, if you use those centering pins to get those drums seated first, now you're guaranteed that the drum is seated on the end of the axle. Then the wheels go on much easier. And again, they protect
the threads.
And you can't get them caulked. And
no. I mean, there's so many good things. And I've got more guys now, especially on the younger techs, that are like, wow, it's a lot easier with those pins. All I have to do is just get a couple bolt holes lined up, and the wheels slide right on. So they're using more of those. And you know, when those first came out, I was on those right away. I had one of the first sets. I think I had them before they were even commercially available. I was using them in my classes because I saw the value in it. I'm like, wow, that's going to seat the drum. And I know that you worked on that a lot.
I worked on that.
I know
for a couple of years, and you know the expense, and it's hard to. But we had to heat treat those because we're pushing on drums.
Right.
And back when they were cheaper,
is that why they're so expensive?
That's why they're so expensive.
I knew that was coming.
Heat treated,
and you can also torque them pretty high.
Yeah, but I mean, when we figured out they could push on the drum and seat the drum, that was gigantic. And then caulking, you really don't caulk the front wheel, but boy, the rear wheels, you could get them caulked pretty easy. Because a lot of technicians would put them on and they're going to like lean back on them. And if you tighten that bottom nut, you just screwed up the whole system. You got to slide them on by doing that top one.
And then do 12-6.
And you know, that's critical. And then, you know, we get into, you know, me and Kevin, it's funny because, you know, we come up with sayings when Peggy used to try to separate us like little kids in school because we'd sit back there and make up names. So the good and tight method.
Good and tight.
Good and tight. That's the German method.
The German wheel installation procedure. Good and tight.
The good and tight.
How many ugga-duggas?
Tell them about the good and tight. Because
well, the good and tight is just take an impact wrench and hammer on it till it stops moving. And, you know, on a hub-piloted system, you'll be upwards of 1,100, 1,200 foot-pounds. Easily.
You've totally gone past the yield point.
Easily. We've done a really good job, I think, as an industry over the years of getting people interested in doing it correctly and professionalism. And I absolutely know that wrist, I mean, it's not just truck tires, but it's car tires, earth mover tires, everything. I mean, we've made wrist the worldwide installation procedure for wheels. And again, you know, when I first came up with it, you know, you were one of the first people I called, and I said, what do you think about this? And he was just like, that's perfect. I mean, remove and spec snug torque, I mean, people got stickers on buildings and posters in buildings and shops and stuff.
Perfect. Does it have your face with it, or?
No. I have a face for radio. That's why I'm glad this is a podcast.
No, but I did want to bring up one story about the good and tight method because I had a customer, and he was having tremendous issues with stud breakage. So he schooled his technician for about a month or two before he allowed me to come down and watch him. And, you know, I think he probably went to TIA in the meantime, but he was down there and he did this process. And I mean, he was lubing, you know, doing the 2 drops of oil and doing the drop and
doing 90% right.
Doing everything right. Yeah. And then he snugs them up. He grabs a 1-inch gun and he bum. Then he grabs a torque wrench and he goes around and he clicks them all and he smiles at me like, see? And then at the end of the process, the superintendent of the company looks at me and says, and may you critique one thing that we did wrong?
I only needed to critique one thing.
And I said, let's grab that torque wrench and turn it up to as high as it will go.
Yeah.
And it went click, click, click. And then he says, how tight? So we went to a earth moving dealership, brought their torque wrench back. It was 1,200 foot-pounds.
Easily.
And they wondered why they were breaking studs.
Easily.
And I said, this is the good and tight method that we've talked about for years. You snug them up, you run them up. I mean, you don't even need a 1-inch gun. I mean, the guns, half-inch guns, or three-quarter, get you up there. Then you bring them to torque. So, I mean, that's very critical in what we do.
Max torque on a 1-inch impact wrench is right around 1,500 to 1,600 pounds in most cases. That's max torque. Now, we've always used the 1-inch gun because we feel we need that to get them off. But in a hub-piloted system, it's 90-something% of what's out there right now. But our guys just won't get away from that.
Well, we were talking to a gentleman last night here who said basically they've taken out the forward pin. So you can't use your gun, your 1-inch gun, to put anything on. You can only use it to take it off.
Some of the newer models they've done that, but I mean it's still a rough business, and people are hard on equipment and tools. So Dave and I have gone round and around about torque sticks, how they are better than good and tight, but they're still not accurate. And the biggest problem with a torque stick is that if you've got an insufficient airflow or a deficient air wrench, torque stick will actually make you go under. Now, the torque stick will keep you from going way over. The danger there is that you're going to be under.
Big issue there, too.
And now you're getting into airflow issues. You're going to get into CFM. You're going to get into all kinds of other problems that can go along. I mean, the amount of power that's applied to a pneumatic tool is dependent on a lot of factors, and it varies. You know, how many tools are being used at the same time? Do I have enough flow in the entire system? You know, if I'm using 2 impact wrenches at the same time, what are my line size? What is the compressor? Is there a reserve tank? I mean, we can get into all that stuff.
And one of the things we did here at TMC was we figured out it needed 90 PSI at the gun.
Right. That's rated on the gun.
It's actually what's rated on the gun. So, I mean, there's a lot of things when you're trying to explain to people, like, you need 90 PSI on this gun. And if you don't have that.
And that's free running.
Yes.
That's free running. We would do a test back when I was in Louisville. When I had the static pressure at 125 on a 25-foot hose, I would get 90 PSI at the gun. If I used a 50-foot hose, I needed 145 pressure at the end because I had all that extra length. And again, on the torque stick side of it, you know, running pressure means everything in terms of the power of the wrench. So there's so many variables in there. And one of the things I saw, I don't even know if you've seen this yet, but it's over in the Tuffy booth over here. Milwaukee has got a new brand of 18-volt rechargeable cordless impact wrenches, and they actually have the ability to shut the torque off at particular torques because it's electric. So here's an impact wrench that'll pull the tire, it'll pull the nuts off like any other 1-inch impact wrench, but when you go to install it, you set one of the 4 preset settings. You could have a preset setting at 475, and it'll actually deliver 475 foot-pounds with the impact wrench at installation. I would probably periodically spot check myself, as a thing. But there's pneumatic nut runners out there, and there's a lot of technology that's available to get us to the right torque.
It's coming.
Exactly.
It's here.
Absolutely.
But it's not everywhere.
It's not. It's not. And I mean, and you can still just go to the old manual torque wrench. I mean, you know, whether it's and this is a funny story. You know, when we do our videos, we typically use what's called a breakneck torque wrench.
Yep.
And a breakneck torque wrench is when you when you put enough force on the handle actually bends. So it's a slang as a breakneck torque wrench. And I had a torque wrench guy corner me in Vegas a couple years ago, and just read me the riot act on why do you use breakneck torque wrenches, and I make a clicker torque wrench and it's better than a breakneck, and it's all you show in your videos are breakneck torque wrenches, and you've got to be on their payroll, and they're giving you a kickback, and you're getting this and this. And I sat there and I just kind of waited, and I said, can I talk now? And he said, sure, go right ahead. I'd like to hear your answer as to why you only feature breakneck torque wrenches in your videos. And I looked him right in the eye and said, it looks better on film. I can't see a click.
Yeah.
That's why. Simple. And look, I don't care what torque wrench you're using, but in a video, I can't see a click. I can see the handle break.
Right.
It just looks better on film. That was the reason. I mean, I don't really care what torque wrench you're using as long as you're using a torque wrench.
And get you to 500 or 475 or whatever it is you're targeting.
Exactly. But we really stress, though, on the wrist side of it, proper torque guarantees nothing. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've said that over the last 15 years. Or my instructors. Proper torque guarantees nothing. If you don't have clean mating surfaces, if you don't have good fasteners and hardware, if the drum's not seated and it's not, seated properly on the end of the axle, I can have the highest quality torque device on the planet, and I'm still going to get loose wheels.
Very good.
Yeah. So we hammer on the procedures and processes. That's our big thing, and safety.
You've gone through wrist.
Yeah.
Now you're done.
We'll recommend that there is a torque check after 50 to 100 miles. I know that I've done a very good job of eliminating the retorque. We don't use retorque anymore because retorque assumes that you didn't do it right the first time.
Right.
So we say torque check, recommend a torque check after 50 to 100 miles.
Well, and we're a little different than most because we go 5. And what our thing is, get the vehicle out, run it around, try to twist and turn and get back. And what we have learned from our testing, which was all done by fleets at TMC, is once you check it at 5 and you recheck, and that joint is pretty good there. We had one fleet that never lost any torque through the whole life of that wheel and that. So, I mean, their process was so under control. They were cleaning, they were oiling the stud correctly. They were making sure the nut was right. And they used to bring their trucks in and it saved them literally thousands and thousands of dollars because they proved that their process is under control. We wrote an RP at TMC, and me and Kevin, we've had so many conversations over the years, but the lawyers dictate.
Some of them even about tires and wheels.
Yeah. Lawyers dictate what we do.
Oh,
and if you have this little chart saying, I've checked 30 because I checked 30 and we're all.
Your data?
There's our data and da-da-da-da. So as a fleet, you want to save these little charts to say, hey, I got my process under control, I check it. So, I mean, that's a big thing in the industry. But, again, at TMC, come up something with fleet-friendly usage. So
now that's specific to fleets, though, because it's a captive fleet.
Yes.
They're doing all their own work. Now, on our side of it,
everybody.
I don't know who I'm going to get. I mean, I don't know where that thing was last week, last month, last year. I mean, so anybody could have serviced it before me.
Right.
So we don't have that luxury in the sense that, I don't know who did it before me. I don't know who else. Did the other guy do it at 1,200 foot-pounds?
Right.
With an Ugga-Dugga and a Good and Tight. It's got 4 Ugga-Duggas and a Good and Tight. Now I'm going to do it correctly. So, and the industry is still pretty much 50 to 100 foot-pounds as far as everybody. But, yeah, I agree with Dave. And we say that, too. We don't say it officially, but, I mean, at a minimum, some figure eights and some railroad tracks, just something to flex that wheel. Make those wheels flex in both ways, and run over some speed bumps or some railroad tracks or something. But you've got to get that, and you got to get that joint to settle. And if it's done properly, it won't.
Exactly.
It won't settle. It'll retain all of its bolt tension.
If you didn't do it properly, you'll be able to find out.
Correct.
Yes.
And you'll see movement.
Right. Do it once, do it right. And that's what you're looking for.
We'd agree with that. I'd agree with that 100%. Yeah.
So you've got it on there. You've checked it. Torque's good.
Yep.
We're out on the road.
Yep.
Don't have to worry about my tires again.
Well, I mean, every tire should be pre-checked before every trip, and you got to check inflation pressure without kicking it. The boodometer is not accurate. I think that we talked about this yesterday a little bit. Is it a behavior issue or is it a process issue? And I think that drivers have to recognize that they play a role in all this as well. They're the ones that see it every day. So they have to be checking for loose wheels. They have to be checking their inflation pressures with more than a mallet or a tire billy or something like that. I mean, it's an ongoing maintenance thing. Things change. Yeah. We typically say that if the wheels fall off in the first 500 miles, it's probably installation. But, I mean, I've seen wheels come loose after, 20, 30,000 miles, and they're trying to pin it on the technician that installed it. Look, if I lost tension at installation, it ain't going to go 20,000 miles.
Yes.
And that's just the way that it is. So we try and make sure that we distinguish that a little bit. I've been in a couple of cases where they've said that, and they've said, oh, well, this is installation. I'm like, well, the thing ran for 20,000 miles. Well, but they did something wrong. I mean, it's a hub-piloted wheel. If it was loose when we installed it, it ain't going to make 20,000 miles.
Right.
So
the job is never done.
No, exactly. It's never done. It's never done.
And I guess I'll bring up, and we've had this conversation. A normal tire, there used to be a normal tire loses so much air pressure per month.
1 to 2 psi per month.
Yes. And when you try to tell somebody like, hey, that is just normal. Now, if you don't have some type of other issue, like a valve cap on it that's not, that, and
Valve stems.
valve stems, anything type of leakage or anything like that. So people will say, well, tires are perfect. Well, they're
Well, the thing is, you're going to get leakage from the system overall. Just to jump in, I mean, a valve is allowed to lose 0.2 cc's during its initial leak testing. So there's always some sort of seepage. So you've got to check.
Nothing's completely airtight.
Yeah,
I mean, nothing's completely airtight. And I think that's where I know that on the driver's side of it, and we say this as well, and this is a message for all the fleets out there. If you're not paying for a high-quality inflate-through valve cap, you can't ever inspect your inflation pressure to get checked.
Yeah.
Because one of the two things are going to happen. Either we're going to run it without a valve cap, and you're going to have an exposed valve core, which nobody wants, or we're going to put a self-sealing metal valve cap on there, and it's never going to come off. I mean, I can tell you that as a young technician, and we had a fleet that ran a lot of aluminum wheels, and they had the small, it's 20 degrees out below zero in Chicago, and I'm not taking I'll take valve caps off once, and then I'm going to put them in a box, and then they're going to stay in the box. But, if you don't put inflate-through valve caps on valve stems, then you can't ever inspect anyone to check that inflation pressure. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So if it's important to you, then pay for a high-quality inflate-through valve cap. And put it on there, and now there's no excuses. Then it's just a ch-ch, and I mean, now you got TPMS, you got ATIS on trailers. I mean, it's that next phase of the evolution, type thing. And we have, TPMS standard on all cars since 2008.
Right.
Since the 2008 model year, and yet here we are with 80,000 pounds of gasoline running down a road at 65 miles an hour. And the only way that the driver can check the inflation pressure is to actually get out and hit it with a gauge. It's just, to me, and I write stuff for Fleet Owner, and I'm always harping on RFID, and I'm always harping on TPMS, and I'm always harping on leveraging technology. We've got to leverage technology if we really want to make an impact, and we're just not doing it. And it's the fleets don't see value, or the manufacturers don't see value, or whatever, but I think from a liability perspective, it would make sense. I'm seeing more and more of it. We've already trained to it. We've already trained to demounting and mounting tires with valve stem sensors, anticipating it.
Okay.
So that we're already prepared, so we know it. And that's worked really well. But it would seem to me to be so easy to put a light on the dashboard and put sensors in all 10 tires on the tractor. And, ATIS and those type of systems on trailers are fantastic. I believe it is a tire pressure monitoring system. It's not traditional, but I still think you're monitoring pressure. The driver still gets notified if it's losing air. It's providing air. Air to the tire is the lifeblood. It's the engine oil. It's the transmission fluid. It's critical. And to not focus on that and to just ignore that is short-sighted, and it's going to cost people money, and potentially it could be dangerous. I mean, let's face it. If the tires go flat en route, on the road, yeah, exactly. It depends on where, and all the different factors that kind of go into that. But it's a complex system that's very simple.
Right.
I mean, really what it is. And without air, you're not going to have anything. And so, I mean, we look at, again, as a systems approach. It's everything. It's a lot better than it was when we first started, Dave. I mean, we're a lot safer today than we were years ago. I think we're going to all have the same problems moving forward with finding people. I mean, I know that on the truck tire side of it, I can promise you long days. When it's hot, you're hot. When it's cold, you're cold. When it rains, you're going to get wet. When it's parked in snow, you're going to be working in snow. And, when it's parked in something else, you're going to work in that too. So, I mean, the youth of today aren't really interested in working hard with manual labor. So, I mean, it's hard to find people that want to do this job. So we've got to find ways to make it easier. And we have to find ways to leverage technology. I know that I was just talking with a dealer before that said, they're moving to tire changing machines now, because they can't get guys to do the physical work. It's not going to be doing it for them. So now they've got tire changing centers. They've got $25,000 tire changing machines, and the guy just sits there and runs the joysticks. And they're like, young people will do that all day. They'll stand there all day and just do the joysticks and stuff like that, because they're not doing the labor. Now, if you want the money, you got to go into road service, and that's where the money is.
Right.
And that's where you're going to get your overtime.
Now, I got a question on that. On the road service, isn't it allowed to have do they change the tire right on the truck without taking it off?
That is
So I've heard that.
Yeah, it's the one time that it's legally acceptable is if you're installing a new tire.
Okay.
If I'm going to mount a new tire on an outside position, technically, I don't have to take the wheel off the rim.
Okay, well, we're getting to the end of our discussion.
There you go.
I guess we're done. Yeah.
Boss says we're done.
So, Kevin, hey, thank you so much for coming by.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Really, really great discussion.
We'll see you next
see you
time.
next
time. Yeah,
well,
anytime.
no, we'll hear you next time.
Yeah, probably.
All right,
That's
very
probably
good.
a good thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sponsored by Alcoa Wheels, the global leader in aluminum wheel innovation, manufacturing, and technology. Inventing the first forged aluminum wheel in 1948, its team of experts continue to develop the most lightweight, efficient, and high-performing commercial vehicle aluminum wheel products. Bringing you revolutionary innovations like Alcoa DuraBrite wheels, Alcoa DuraBlack wheels, the new Alcoa Wheels hubboard technology, and the lightest truck wheel on the market, Alcoa Ultra One 22.5 by 8.25 wheel. Alcoa Wheels, the global leader in aluminum wheel innovation.